Hello, everyone. Welcome to Away Games, a Chicago Cubs and baseball podcast hosted by two comedians who love the Cubs but live in New York. I almost said Chicago because you just got back from Chicago. I'm Adam Amawala. I'm here with Kevin McCaffrey, and we finally had one of us go to Wrigley Field. How's it going, Kev?
Yeah, it's fine here now in New York, I guess. I've had quite a weird week overall, I guess.
Yeah.
I got COVID. Finally, people were talking, why hadn't I had it? So I eventually got on board. Like I said, with everything else in showbiz, I got this credit a little after everyone stopped caring about it. So that's what I did. Felt it a little bit. I mean, I had four shots before this, so I'm sure that helped keep it down a little bit, but then pretty much.
And by the way, not to interrupt, this is not the only time that Kevin has said, I had 4 shots before this.
No, this is like probably the most sober podcast I do. I do a lot of like podcast and radio stuff. I guess we usually record this earlier in the day, so that contributes to it. But yeah, if you listen to my Sex and the City, it's a Bridgerton Bros podcast. I'm fucking drunk on that sometimes. So, so I got through whatever past COVID, and then it was my mom's birthday. After COVID stuff, I officiated a wedding, went to my mom's birthday, had to drive the 12 hours there and back. And I went to game 1 of the Brewers Cubs on Monday, where they lost 7-6, I believe.
But I feel like that seemed like a fun game and a fun atmosphere, at least. Like, what were your impressions of Wrigley in this current iteration of Cubs baseball and Cubs history?
I mean, the crowd was good. The crowd was into it. Everything cost way too much for a team that they chose to make not good. So it's that's the ticket prices were still like $60, for a view obstructed situation.
Right.
So I think that's a failure and unforgivable or organizationally, I would say. But yeah,
it's one of the few times that an obstructed view is actually doing you a favor.
Yeah, there was, I didn't have to see. I wish it had been obstructed so I couldn't see Clint Frazier's worse than little leaguer left field defense. This was the game where Matt Swarmer came up and he made his major league debut. Nelson Velasquez made his major league debut, and Swarmer pitched a good game. His defense did him real dirty. Clint Frazier, literally, I mean, little leaguer or worse level defense. It was a ball he should have caught on the fly. He got scared. He backed up and then let the ball get by him. That was runs right there that wouldn't have scored otherwise. And then Frank Schwindel couldn't catch a ball on the fly to first base. And it's little leaguer defense. And that's, throughout this Brewers series, we've seen the team just do things that losing teams do.
I tell you what, it's got to be close between worst defense, Clint Frazier on Monday, and Christian Yelich last night as we record this on Wednesday. I mean, he looked absolutely lost out there.
On the Wilson Contreras fly ball to left, I saw.
Not only on that, but then, so it was like first on the Contreras ball that I think Contreras would admit should have been a triple. He kind of was patting his chest when he got to second because it was way up in the air, and he kind of did that like Carlton Fisk hop a little bit to will it fair. But anyway, not only did Yelich misplay that, but there was another ball in the gap in left field that Schwindel hit right after it, I believe. It was a little bit like the Tyler Naquin World Series play where like just someone didn't take charge, but very much a ball that should be caught. Yeah,
it was. It hasn't been terribly crisp baseball played, but the game we saw, it's outside of those. It was the game the Cubs should have won. Obviously, it was. They had to go out of their way with bad defense to lose it. But got to see. Man, I wish I had gone on DraftKings or FanDuel and put money on a Rafael Ortega, PJ Higgins back-to-back jack situation. That was that was unexpected but exciting. I mean, the weather was great. They scored some runs at least, and that I have now checked off my one Wrigley visit for the year. And that's all I play.
Yeah, and you know what? Hearing you describe the ungodly prices for old style and whatever else they sell at Wrigley, why don't we create a business model for all of sports, not even just Major League Baseball, where the price of drinks and food is directly proportional to the payroll? How about that?
Dude, that is such a great idea. That is a great idea. And that's the kind of thing that really reflects what capitalists want you to think capitalism is, like based on performance and stuff. That would be perfect. I mean, obviously that's not what it's about. They just charge you as much as they can get away with forever.
Right. But hey, dollar beers at every Rays game.
Dollar beers at every I think that would be perfect. That would also be almost a soccer style incentive to, with in leagues where there's relegation, if you suck, you have to go away for a bit. I think that would be, then we would actually see some genuine spending commensurate with what the market is. So that's a great idea. Is there an obvious shirts next level of the business, like obvious business plans, I guess?
Right. Well, I think we have learned over the past few years that what we think of as obvious business plans are not necessarily what the Ricketts and Hoyers of the world think of as obvious business plans. But thanks again to the Ricketts for their thoughts and prayers on the Texas shooting. So
always thinking and praying, those guys, thinking and praying all the time. And I will talk about more, I guess more what's happened this past week, what we're looking forward to. But as I was driving 12 hours, I was really ruminating on the frustration of, I think, what is something I've seen bubbling up on Cubs Twitter and sort of like tanking apologists, I guess. And it had me realize what the similar feeling was. And for me, and this is great, because this is going to make everyone hate me. No one's going to be happy at all with what I'm saying here. I've realized that for me, voting for the Cubs now feels like voting for Democrats. It makes me feel like a Biden enthusiast, because in both situations, it's basically like, look, in both cases, I'm still going to do it. I'm going to vote Democrat because I'm a fucking adult, and I'm going to root for the Cubs because I'm a fucking child. That's the only difference. But with centrist Democrats, I realize it's like there's no $15 minimum wage, no voting rights, no codifying Roe, no gun control, no canceling significant student debt. All things they said they would do, then they didn't, and then they get mad at you. You get Jen Psaki yelling at you about, why don't you just vote blue no matter who? And then in the Cubs situation, it's like, no, we're not going to negotiate one successful extension with anyone in our core. We're going to sell an ace just to for payroll reasons. We're going to sell an ace immediately after winning a division. We're going to lie about the rebuild we're going into in Jed Hoyer's case. And then we're also going to cover it up. As we saw in Marquee, we had people talking specifically about Jed Hoyer's transparency, and they cut the fucking thing. Like Russian state media, they cut it and said it was for technical difficulties, which is the opposite of transparency. They're going to tank multiple years in a row. And by the way, can we at least have cheaper tickets? No, we can't. But still, fucking root blue no matter who. In both cases, it's these teams that are like trying to convince you that, like, no, we don't have to give you anything, just support us. And it infuriates me in both cases.
Let me tell you something. We've done 200 something of these episodes, and that might be the best rant I've ever witnessed on this podcast.
I had a lot of time in the car, and just and having people fucking tweeting about, like, I saw someone, it was a tweeter who's normally, I'm not even going to mention his name because he's a smart guy typically, but it's this thing that I'm very sick of in Cubs Twitter land, and I think our friend Joe Kilgallen is sick of it to the point where he deactivated his account. Did you see that?
Yeah.
But someone tweeting that, hey, just so you know, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, and Javi Baez combined for 0.3 wins above replacement. And I don't get the fun of the bit that we're doing here to continue ripping on the people who, even as it's a joke, whatever, haha, we're trolling, I guess. Great. Whoever enjoys that, have fun. But like, my reply to that was, how are the 2022 Cubs doing? And the amount of fury from other people, like, well, at least they're not paying money. It's better than paying $60 million to have the same record. And my question is, fucking, is it? What do you care? It's not your money, first of all. And no one was arguing you should keep everybody at all costs, no matter what. That's not the equation we're working with here. And it's just like, we have this fan base now, and it's not all fan base, but there's just like, there's this, like, I hate to, it's a dumb word, but this like cucked group of fans who are like, Jed's league, fucking, he got us here in the first place. It's very frustrating to me.
I mean, in trying to think about it from the other perspective, I guess there's a school of thought where if you don't re-sign people, you hope that they don't play really well so that it makes you feel a little better about not re-signing them. I guess it's the same ideology as like, hey, I'm leaving New York to go to Florida for a week. I hope that the weather in New York is rainy and 40 the whole time I'm there, so it makes me feel extra good about my decision to have left this place. Yeah. First of all, I'm never going to be able to do that. I don't think neither you nor I will be able to root against any of these people.
No.
I also want to submit to that person that it would not surprise me whatsoever if Javi hits 400 in July because he's
Yes.
Javi, and we know these people are streaky. That's
Yeah.
never been a question. Yeah, I don't understand the kind of like building up of all of these prospects we got way beyond where they're at right now and what we could conceivably expect from them anytime soon. And the other overarching feeling I have is like, okay, great. So you didn't re-sign any of them. Spend the fucking money elsewhere then.
That's the thing, right? Because like I appreciate I as much as I'm emotionally connected to these guys, whatever, there is a plan to do winning baseball without those guys. It seems like we have a chunk of our fan base that thinks the Cubs are the Minnesota Twins or the Cleveland Guardians or the Cincinnati Reds, who we just lost to by 15 in a year when they're tanking as well. So I mean, like the thing is, it's just like we don't have to live like that. It's such loser mentality that we don't have to have. But I'm saying we, it's just some people, but like are enthusiastically letting this team have a pass on, and that's very frustrating. And as you say, it's like there's prospects that we are excited about the prospects. Like we root for every player on this team, like all the players. Right. Absolutely. It's just very frustrating to me when you find pockets of Cubs Twitter that will go way out of their way to tell you about all the good things about Frank Schwindel and Rivas, and then tell you how Anthony Rizzo is bad. It's just like an upside down world that doesn't exist. Like that is wrong factually, and also I don't get the upside and why we're even trying to make the argument. So yeah, so that was.
Is it some sort of like psychological, like it's easier to hate my exes than to just acknowledge that like they're people who just aren't in my life anymore?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's sort of a I guess it makes sense that in the sports world there's not a lot of like healthy separations, emotionally. Right. And that makes sense. And some of us, and myself included, might be hanging on too hard, a little too nostalgic. And I get that. And then these other people are wanting to push them away. I just don't. I mean, do whatever bits and trolling you want online, but like, I'm over the checking in on wins above replacement on the guys who left here as if it's some sort of dunk on the guys who actually achieved something, while we meanwhile are excusing all the guys who have replaced them who are worse and still worse,
Yeah, completely.
So
I don't know. Well, I was gonna say I don't know where you have stood on the whole Ghost Runner thing, but it's certainly interesting to watch a game in which the Cubs blow 3 saves in the same game.
It was
any feelings on that?
Yeah, I mean they weren't good feelings, right? But also with no. with the Ghost Runner or the Zombie Runner, whatever you want to call it, the made up guy that they just threw out there on second base. It's sort of like, in some ways, I get less upset about the blown save because the team in the top half of the inning, it's not like they really blew the save either because the run was also out there. So I guess I don't get as angry about it, but it is like, it makes you feel insane to some degree, right? Because it's like, yeah.
Well, it's when that runner goes wrong, meaning like, yes, it is provably the case that with the runner on second to start extra innings, games are not going into the 18th inning anymore. Not that they were that much anyway, but the point is like most of them are ending pretty quickly. But it does create a situation where if the team only gets that one run on the top, it's fairly likely that the other team will get that run in the bottom, and it can just kind of keep going in this bizarre cycle where you feel good for like 10 minutes, but then you remember that the other team's going to have a runner on second to start the bottom of the inning. In general, it was just a frustrating game, and certainly a game where you would have loved to have seen Stroman get a win after he pitched really well. Like I think that's my big takeaway is a combination of Stroman looked great. Also, why the fuck did we include Dylan Cease in that trade?
Yes, Dylan Cease is very good. He's on the, I think it was John Greenberg called it. He's on the doing his own research list, so he cannot go pitch in Toronto. But Dylan Cease was great. Yeah, and then it turns out that's the one sure thing starting pitcher that has come up through the Pitch Lab Cubs system. In these in these last few years. So that's very frustrating. But on the upside, after very very frustrating feelings in the opening half of this podcast this week, on the upside, Marcus Stroman has looked good multiple outings in a row now,
right?
And it was really good to see what he was doing.
Yeah, it was great to see. It's good to have some degree of consistency, at least with like one of our starting pitchers, because, and I don't think we talked about this on the last podcast. Kyle Hendricks followed up his best outing in a long time with one of his worst in a long time, which is not something that you want to see. Justin Steele has not looked as good the last couple starts. So yeah, it's nice. It's nice to see from Stroman. I feel like the bullpen continues to look very good, which leads me to believe that a lot of them will be flipped, which is,
Sure.
Again, we don't have a problem with. I think flipping a Givens or Robertson at the deadline is not a bad idea.
No, you have to do it.
Yeah, you'd be silly not to at their peak value, but yeah, I mean, they're even in a week that was like somewhat frustrating, there are still things that have been fun to watch, and I think I've never been part of the pro get rid of Javi crowd, but Morel has seemingly taken the place of Javi in terms of being a guy who can single-handedly get the crowd jacked up, and I really enjoy that a lot.
He's an immediate crowd favorite, and he is a guy who, I mean, it's still early on. I mean, remember it was, and excuse me, it was a couple weeks in the season where like, is Seiya Suzuki a genuine star? And he still might be, but like he obviously went into a slump and then hurt his finger. So these things can still happen for Chris Morel, but Morel has exceeded every scouting report that I ever read on him. He's exceeded everything he did statistically, but he seems to be doing it in kind of a repeatable way to this point. It's excuse me, it's a situation where like you it's hard to temper yourself, but he's taking good at bats. He's taking walks, which was never a thing he did, but he seems to be doing it in a in a way where he looks like he knows what he's doing. He's laying off tough pitches down, and he's flashing power all over the place. He's stealing bases. He had a triple, and then, as you said, the Javi thing of just doing weird ththings that you don't see all the time. And that's in the field, that's at the plate, and that's also just like as a dude, right? Like, cause he walked I think it was last night, and then it was in a situation where the Cubs were trying to come back, and he waited till Wilson Contreras got to the plate until he left for first, and he gave Wilson a smack on the back and then took off. And it's just like he's very spontaneous, and everyone seems to love him. And and
speaking of Contreras, he'll do the Contreras thing where if he draws a walk in a big spot, he'll like pump his fist down the first baseline or do like a bat flip on a walk, which is always very amusing to me. And I was listening to a little bit of the Compound podcast today, and they were talking about how he's like, Morel has always been that guy where even in the minors, he was like just a big like hug and high five guy. Like and apparently he did that when Efros was coming out of the bullpen, he like high fived him in the outfield, and then did the same thing with David Robertson. So I love it. I mean, I'm much more on board with the director of Morel than I am the other one.
The director of Morel absolutely is the main. It's been one of the brightest spots that we've had so far, and I think we're sitting on a 10-game hitting streak and a 14-game on base streak to begin his career, right?
I mean, he's rostered in my fantasy league, so and it's not me, it's someone else has been paying attention.
Couple homers, couple steals too. I mean, like, he's helping across the board. Really, if the guy can take walks and not strike out all the time, there's really not much keeping him from being a significantly valuable starting regular, a guy who's giving you plus defense, who can play, I don't know if it's plus, but at least like average to above defense in center field, shortstop, plus at third base, plus at second base. I mean, it's very exciting to see. And apparently he and Nelson Velasquez, who came up, and it's funny, Velasquez is like big power prospect, strikes out a ton, hits a ton of homers, was the Arizona Fall League MVP last fall, believe it or not. That's when they have that league. He came up and he has had 2 infield singles right off the bat. So it's like the opposite, but those guys are like best friends apparently. It was cute to read about where Velasquez texted Morel that he was coming up. Morel freaked out, was like, "Are you kidding?" Whatever. And then then Morel said that like, we're brothers, blood is the only thing we don't have, and Velasquez said he was, quote, his bestie. So That's fun.
I have a real galaxy brain theory on Morel's ability to take walks in the majors. Tell me if
Love
you
it.
think I'm crazy. Is it possible that someone in the minors is conscious of the fact that what's going to get them to the majors is hitting more than walking? Like, is it possible that that is something where someone's like, yeah, Joey Votto's great, but if I really want to turn some heads, it's probably going to be with triples and home runs more than it is walks. So they're more likely to chase or be, antsy versus when they actually get to the majors and they can settle in a little bit.
I think even if it's not a conscious thing, I think that absolutely has to happen. I mean, I think that's the thing. If you did a deep statistical dive, I would not be surprised
Right.
if there was a trend that way, that like it's because it's, I mean, it's sort of like when, even if you're in a, I guess in that sense, it's, you sort of think about not making the majors yet as sort of a version of a slump. Like when guys are in the majors, they try to hit themselves out of the slump, right? And then you dig
Right.
yourselves deeper. And then if you're in the minors, you're trying to make an impression. And yeah, like walks, it's hard, even if walks will get you noticed, it's hard to count on that. Right.
Right.
So I think that's a pretty good galaxy brain take, actually.
Yeah. There was never a commercial that where the punchline was like chicks dig walks.
Although they do. Yeah, nice walk around a park or something.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Hadn't thought of
Fellas
it in
love
that
walks
context.
too. This fella digs a walk.
I love a walk.
Yeah. We also had, you mentioned the starting pitching, and I think that's something to keep an eye on right now too, because we had Stroman coming back consistent. Hendricks, as you said, has been the opposite of consistent, which sucks. And it's going on 2 years now that it's been like
Right.
ace level game and then really blowing up, and that's disconcerting. And I think Hendricks starts tonight, right, as we record
Yep.
this.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's yeah, so we'll see how that goes to finish off this Brewers series. But Steele, you mentioned too, is a guy who had 2 real good games, then got absolutely lit up in a game where everyone got lit up. I guess I think it was like 8 different pitchers all giving up runs or something, right?
Yep.
And then yesterday, I do think it was encouraging to see Steele get through 5, because he basically in the 3rd inning gave up some soft contact, walked a guy. It was like a bloop single. It was pretty soft triple, honestly. And then came back and locked down 2 innings after that. So I think like that is a thing that I want to see the Cubs stick with, both him and Keegan Thompson, who had a better start. I want to see these guys get some rope to go up and down, because you're going to see inconsistency with them. And I want to see them continue to get shots to start between now and the end of the year, because I am sick of every single Cubs pitcher, the thing being like, well, he could be a good couple inning reliever. Like, we need to get starters in that rotation, and that has to be part of what this year is about.
100%. Yeah. I mean, you, to a certain degree, you treat this major league year like a minor league year, which is infuriating as a Cubs fan. But like, no, if the Cubs are in the middle of a pennant race, you can't just keep running someone out there if they're getting knocked around. But like, this is a golden opportunity to see what we can get from Steele as a starter, and hopefully from Thompson. I guess he's kind of a starter, kind of not, but whatever you want to call it. Yeah, I agree, because there's already been a lot of chatter on Cubs Twitter about like, I don't know why the Cubs just can't see that Steele is a reliever, and why does no one else see it? It's like, well, maybe that's the case. Maybe that is what he will turn out to be, but I feel like he should have every opportunity to stick in the starting rotation. Again, that's contingent upon people getting healthy and how that affects everyone's individual spot in the rotation. What's the deal with Mills? I keep like, I don't know what's going on with him.
60-day DL, working back, or IL, excuse me, 60-day IL. Working back. I haven't seen a timeline. I know that he's throwing now, so I think it's getting closer, but it's hard to, it's hard to say. And I think this is a thing where I do sort of along the lines of what we're saying about wanting to see the Cubs starters. I think I want to see this team go to a 6-man rotation soon, because of how much this is just like a fact-finding mission this year at this point. And also Miley and Smiley, who are now both down, which sucks, because Miley had been really fun and Smiley was pitching really well as well too. And those are the 2 guys you hope to flip at the deadline, and you acquired them for that very reason. So them being down right now, both injured, hopefully not long term. but it seems like Miley feels like it's going to be a short-term thing. Smiley is a bit more of a question mark, but you got to have those guys in the rotation, obviously, until it's time to flip them, right? And then the other starters we have, Hendricks and Stroman aren't going anywhere. So that's two more. And then, Mills is going to be there. I want to see Steele has to keep getting starts. Keegan Thompson has had two sort of opener situations where he's been efficient enough to go the 5 innings, and I think I would like to see Keegan stretched out that way. I think it's a little too early to just pigeonhole him as a multi-inning reliever. So I would, for the reason I know the Cubs have been hesitant to do a 6-man rotation kind of thing, but also Caleb Killian's going to come up at some point. I would like to see, we need to find, and Alzolay is going to come back, even if it's July or something. And we just have to find a starter or two here. So I want to see guys continue to get starts.
Right. In terms of guys, I think Morel is a little bit of a different story, but someone like a Morel or Higgins, how much of a shot do you think they have to stay up with the big league team?
Well, I think, they're both guys who have some of the positional versatility that the Cubs love.
Right.
I think, we saw Higgins play first base yesterday after a little bit of switching around. And obviously,
I will say that he almost had a Schwindel moment where a pop-up almost got a little hairy for him.
Higgins, and I think, Higgins is a good athlete and he has some skills behind the plate. He has a quick release. He throws very well and he's hit 2 homers real quickly. And he's absolutely tearing the ball up offensively at AAA too. So these are all good things. We also saw him sort of do a Schwindel as a catcher and have a pass ball. I think it was called a wild pitch, but it was a pretty clear pass ball to me. And that's a problem he had last year too, where this is just, he has holes here, as a receiver. So for me,
was that the one that tied the game against the White Sox, or is that okay? Yeah. And that's obviously a huge spot.
Exactly. So I think in terms of staying up, I think Higgins is probably more I'm not 100% positive on his option situation, but if he's optionable, I think he's pretty likely to go down once Gomes is up. You probably don't want to carry 3 catchers with the roster crunch you're going to have coming up soon. But I think honestly, Morel at this point, he is optionable, and I don't see a excusable reason to send him back down. He's turned into one of your sure thing starters on this team right now.
Right.
Whether or not that's his long-term value or future. I mean, this guy, I think unless he completely goes into a tailspin, I think he's proven that he's a major leaguer, and it's time for him to be up here. Even if it's starting 4 days a week, I think sending Morel down would infuriate me. Higgins, I could see going back down, but Higgins is sort of a guy who he could have a decent career as a backup catcher,
Yeah. Yeah. And that's always the case where you're like, I hope I'm wrong about that too. Maybe he is even better than that.
Absolutely. We always hope we're wrong whenever, if we're ever saying we don't want this guy to be the MVP of the league on the Cubs, then then we're lying. This is what we want for everybody. But yeah, I think Velazquez is a guy. It's going to be interesting because the outfield spots fill up real quick once, say, Suzuki comes back. Suzuki and Happ are starting, right? These guys have to start every day. And then in center field, if we're saying everyone's healthy, or in the, let's say, one more outfield spot, if you're shifting Ian to center, which he did this weekend a little bit, Clint Frazier, who is a DH that plays wherever, Hayward, when he comes back, Ortega, Hermosillo, Nelson Velazquez. I mean, it's just a lot of outfielders for not many spots. And my prediction is that I think we might see an Ortega DFA soon, whether he deserves it more than anybody else or not. I think it's just going to be, I don't think they're DFAing Hayward. And at some point there's just other people that are going to have to play.
Yeah. Well, and I also have to say, we've talked about this so many goddamn times in the past few years. The phrase "that's Cub" has never applied more to anything than waiting 5 days to put someone on the 10-day IL.
That's Cub, that's Chris Bryant, right? That was how they handled Bryant every time. Oh God, is that I didn't even catch.
Well, that was Suzuki. I mean, and I understand that maybe you say okay, it's a finger thing. He'll be okay in a couple days. We're gonna have a wait and see approach. But when you're in a stretch where you're playing 11 games in 9 days, maybe you don't want a roster spot that does nothing for you.
Yes, I think that's a great call. And And then as far as we're just seeing a lot of, I mean, maybe every injury that we've seen, every IL stint that we've seen is legit, but boy, there's been a lot of convenient timing on these lately. And the ever reasonable Patrick Mooney, who has become my favorite. Yeah, the Cubs have a lot of great beat writers, but Mooney is the one that speaks to me the most in this era of Cub right now. I think he's, there's no bullshit. He is a very good bullshit detector. And one point that he made that I heard him make on, I think it was the Athletic podcast, was that people are worrying about sort of 40-man roster games, keeping guys available. It's like, this is not a good team overall. The guys at the end of the 40-man roster, I understand you want to keep everybody in a vacuum, but like you just have to not sweat it at some point, like, because they're not going to be around when it matters if it's at the end of the 40-man anyway. So you got to be aggressive about making these roster decisions for, guys you're going to flip or guys who are part of the future. That's it.
Yeah, well said.
Yeah.
Last thing, non-Cubs related. Have you ever slapped someone in the face over a fantasy football disagreement?
That's a great question, Adam. I'm so glad you brought it up. That's the kind of story that we should not be missing on this podcast. I have not slapped anyone. The angriest I've gotten in a fantasy league is there's this one league I'm in with some like an older group of TV writer producers who I was like a late addition years into the league and stuff. But there's this one duo of brothers who the draft will be over and everyone has already been offered a trade within like 2 minutes of the draft. And they will offer you the same bullshit trade that's like no one would make it in a million years. They will offer it. You'll reject it. They'll offer the same thing the next day. I have like written them back like, man, what is happening here? That's the angriest I've ever gotten. It's like,
are they hoping that you just hit the wrong button? Like, what's the play?
I guess it's just like goldfish brain memory, or just like, what are you spamming me about? So that's the angriest I've ever gotten. No, I've never done a Tommy Pham slapping Jock Peterson in the face because he didn't like how he used the IL spot in his fantasy football league that was commissionered by Mike Trout.
Weatherman and commissioner.
Yes.
I mean, but the tasteless GIF. I mean, you have to be very careful with GIFs these days because Jock Peterson really, really ruffled some feathers with that weightlifting GIF.
It was just, and explain the GIF, and I don't say that a lot.
The I don't know. Some people say GIF. I don't agree with that. I'm going to say GIF.
Yeah.
First of all, the earnestness with which Jock Peterson did this interview was very funny. Yeah. But basically, it was in this fantasy football group chat. Was Tommy Pham even on the Padres anymore? I don't think he was. I don't remember. But basically, this was like towards the end of the year where the Padres were shitty and should have been good. And Peterson sent a GIF involving like the Dodgers being the Dodgers logo was over like one weightlifter who was doing a great job, and then the Giants logo was over another weightlifter who's doing a great job, and then the Padres logo was over a weightlifter who like tried to lift a weight and then got crushed by it. But it's like, it's a fucking GIF.
It's a fucking GIF. It's the most, and it's such a light GIF. It's like, it is such an easy. I mean, it just makes me. I sent a GIF immediately to Tommy Pham after this from the @Away Games Pod account that was just of the Reds mascot trying to run on a track and falling down, and I was like, "Will this make you hurt me? Will seeing this make you hurt me, Tommy?" Tommy Pham is just like he's such a conflicting guy for me because he's like he's cool, like he's fought against like vision problems. He got fucking stabbed in San Diego, came back from it. He angrily left the Cardinals, which we like over here, and he's been like a good player, but he's also such a fucking goofball sometimes. This is the goofiest shit. Obviously, he also iconically was picked off first by John Lester, so he's had some real amazing moments, but this is like, it was so funny watching Jock Peterson just drolly, very even-keeled, like read from his phone the exchange to reporters. Jock is fucking cool. Jock is cool.
He's great.
And good.
He's great. Yeah. Where are your pearls in support of Jock Peterson?
Yes.
I mean, was the stabbing related to fantasy football? Now I just have questions about everything.
That's a great question. He's a guy who takes it this seriously. It's not just in one league. Maybe he's on the. I get there's a lot of money at stake, but for goodness sakes,
And then he tried to defend it and like talk about it in a way where he was like, no, I would do it again. That was, he got like, is he just like punching cans of Pringles because the mascot reminds him of the Reds guy? Like what?
It is
what's
very
the
close.
line here?
It's very close, and it's the original Pringles too. So it's that goes with the Reds' first baseball team throwback theme. It was such a pathetic cover up where like Jack is literally reading all the texts that happened, and Tommy Pham was saying like other dudes in the league texted me and they know what happened, and it's like I don't think any of that happened, Tommy Pham. I think that's a lie. And then he blamed Mike Trout with a laugh. He was like, Trout actually could have he could have squashed as the commissioner, but but he did a terrible job as a commissioner. It's like, yeah, that's definitely the issue. Very funny. Have you ever gotten angry at someone? What's the angriest you've gotten in a fantasy league?
It's more that it's kind of similar to what you brought up, where in a fantasy football league that I'm in, a friend of mine will just offer me trades that make me respond every time with like, do you think I'm stupid? Like, do you think I don't watch football? There's no world in which I'm trading you Derrick Henry for your backup quarterback. Like, why are you even offering this trade to me? I will say people once got mad at me, and perhaps rightfully so. Like, I'm one of those people that even if I get knocked out of the playoffs, I'll still try hard in the consolation bracket.
Sure.
And there was a year where I think it was when Derrick Henry just like started to explode, and he wasn't rostered, and I picked him up. I think it was like after I lost the first round, and then I picked him up as someone who had just got knocked out of the playoffs, and the next 2 weeks he had like 44 points and 38 points. Right. And people were like, why the fuck are you picking guys up and making moves like one of us? It's like, I don't know, because I'm still trying. What do you want from me?
You play to the end of the season. If there's games to be played, I think I no, you don't have to tank for them. You don't have to get out of the way.
Right.
I think you're in the right there. Well, hey, don't slap anybody. Also, it's impossible, no matter what the argument is, for you to slap a dude who wasn't looking for it and come out looking good. Ask Will Smith. Ask Tommy Pham. Right. Big year for slapping. And excuse me, sorry. Follow us at Away Games Pod on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for listening, everybody. Anything else, Adam?
Shout out to our buddy Tom Dog for having me up for a really fun show on Friday. Tom is a long time listener, a good man, and I gotta tell you, his hair's looking pretty good these days. Got long do going.
And he likes Jack. He's a Giants fan. So thanks for listening, everybody. Bye.